Hey y'all, welcome to part 6 of the Vectric version 12 Plus for Absolute Beginners video series. In this video, we're going to get back into the basics and I'm going to demonstrate how to move and copy vectors and vector objects. Now, although I'm demonstrating this procedure in Aspire version 12.009. This works exactly the same way in Cut 2D Desktop and Pro, VCarve Desktop and Pro, and Aspire. I have just a 12-inch wide, 12-inch high piece of work material out here, and I'm going to draw a vector object. And the object I'm going to draw is right here under Create Vectors. I'm going to draw a circle. So I'll click on that icon, and that puts us into the Draw Circle form. Now, I don't have a particular size or location in mind. I would like it to be up here in this quadrant of my project, but I don't have a specific size in mind. So what I'll do is I'll come up here and click my left mouse button and drag it out until I get a circle that's about the right size for me. I'll go ahead and close this form. Now immediately after closing that form, we'll see my cursor has changed. It's changed to the arrow with the four-way arrows down at the bottom right side of it. And I have all of these squares and dots around my circle. When you see your vector or vector object represented like this and the cursor with the four-way arrows, you are in what's called Move and Transform mode. Now, there are several ways of getting into Move and Transform mode. I'll click off to the side, and you'll see the four-way arrow disappears off my cursor, and I no longer have all of those dots and squares around my vector. I'll select it again by clicking on it, and I still don't have those dots and squares around it. There are a couple of ways of getting into Move and Transform mode long after you've created the vector or vector object. One way is to come up over here under Edit Objects and look at the third icon over here. This is Transform mode. This will allow you to move, scale, and rotate the selected object. I'll click on that icon, and we come out here and my cursor has the four-way arrow beneath it. Now, I don't have anything selected, so there's nothing to move or transform. But the minute I click on this vector is now in Move and Transform mode. To get out of Move and Transform mode, if I've used this icon, I'll have to come back over here to the first icon to go back into Standard Selection mode, and we've come out of Move and Transform mode, even though that vector is still selected. I'll click off over here. The easiest way to go into Move and Transform mode is to click on it once to select it, wait about a second, and then click it again, and you'll see my cursor is changed to the four-way arrow, and I now have all my dots and squares. Now that we have it in Move and Transform mode, let's see what we can do with it. We have this square in the center. This is an indication of where the center is. I can put my cursor over it and we see it becomes a set of crosshairs. That's indicating the center of this vector object. So I can click and hold my left mouse button, and I can drag that circle wherever I'd like it. Now, moving the circle is not limited to the center. If I want to grab it right here, you'll see my cursor changes to the 4-way arrow. I can click and drag that circle here as well. So if I need to line up this side next to this dot, I don't want to get on the dot. Zoom in, and I can come here and I can grab the vector. I can drag it over here and dock it to the center of my material in X. So what I'm getting at is you don't have to use the center to move the vector. You can grab it anywhere along that vector and it'll work just fine. Now what these white dots out here represent, these are places where you can scale the vector. If you notice, when I put my cursor over one of those dots, they change to a slightly different 4-way arrow. This is for resizing and scaling. If I put my cursor over this dot here, click and drag inwards, I'm changing the shape and size of this circle. You'll notice that on the right side, the circle is pinned to the side directly opposite of that dot that I am dragging around. So I can turn a circle into an oval like so. Let me Control Z to undo that. And the same holds vertically. I'm changing the size as well as changing the shape. I can go bigger or smaller. Control Z to undo that. The dots on the corners, the white dots, that is, will change the size proportionally. It keeps it circle, but you'll notice that we're scaling the size proportionally. It stays a circle, we're just changing the size bigger or smaller. Now something else to notice is that when I used this dot, and even the corner dot, the shape changed from the side I'm moving, but the opposite side stayed put, stayed pinned there. I'll Control Z to undo that. Well, what if I want to change the size, but I want to anchor that change from the center? I can do that by holding down the Shift key, then put my cursor over that dot, click and drag, and it will adjust from both sides, pinning it at the center. And that works horizontally as well as vertically. Control Z, press and hold Shift, and it also works when resizing, rescaling. So, holding down Shift makes those changes from the center of the vector or vector object. Let me Control Z. The black dots outside here are for rotating. Now, this is not a good example for rotating, so let me come down here and we'll draw a rectangle. And I'll start in this corner, click and drag my rectangle out about like so, and close it. I immediately go into Move and Transform mode the minute I close that form. Now I can put my cursor over one of the black dots on the corner, click and hold, and then drag it. I'm rotating around the center of that vector. That's my rotation center. Let me Control Z to undo that. If I don't want to rotate from the center, if I want to rotate around this corner, for example, I can put my cursor over that center dot and click it again, and we see that center square has changed to a miniature bullseye. That's my rotation center. Now I can click and hold and drag that rotation center over to this corner. Now when I grab hold of any of these black squares, I'm rotating around that point. And I can move that rotation center anywhere along that vector I choose to move it, and rotate it around this point. It doesn't have to be anywhere even symmetrical. I can put it anywhere along that vector or inside that vector and rotate it around that point. Let me zoom out. I can even move it outside of the vector and rotate it around that point as well. So, move and transform mode gives you a lot of power to be able to move things and rotate things to get the proper placement of your vector or vector object. Let me go ahead and delete this and we'll go back to the circle. So that's moving without precision. What if you want to move this to a specific place within your design? Well, we can come up here under Transform Objects to this first icon, and this is Move Selected Objects. If I click on this icon, we go into the Move Selection form. Now I have two ways I can move this. I can move it to an absolute location, or I can move it to a relative location. And we'll get into both of those right now. First, I'm going to use an absolute move. Now, here we're going to pick our anchor point. In this case, I want to move the center of this circle to the center of this quadrant. I've got a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of material, so each of these squares is 6 inches by 6 inches. I want to put the center of this circle at my 3-inch in Y and negative 3-inch in X. Again, remembering the Cartesian coordinate system, here is my Y0. I want it 3 inches above that. Here's my X-axis 0. Because we're moving to the left of 0, I want negative 3 inches. So, we'll come over here, anchor the center. I want to do an absolute move, and I want my X position to be negative 3.0 and my Y position to be 3.0. Then I'll click Apply, and it puts the center of that circle right here in the center of this quadrant. If, for example, I've decided that I need it in the center of this quadrant over here, I could go ahead and change this to a positive X position, and that would move it over here. It would put it into positive 3 in X and positive 3 in Y, and that changed the position. I'm going to Control Z to undo that, because there's another way of getting the same result. If I want to move this over here, that's also a 6-inch relative move. So, to make a relative move, you'll notice my readouts changed to 0, 0, because I'm going to move this relative to where it is now. I want it to go positive 6 inches on the X-axis. So, I'll come over here and go 6.0, then click Apply, and it moved it 6 inches to the right from my original position. Now, if I want to move it back over 1 inch, I can go a negative, because we're moving to the left, 1.0, click apply, and it moved over from its former position. It moved 1 inch. That's how we can move objects with precision. So moving objects around are fairly easy. You can do them precisely or just drag them to an approximate location and drop them. I'm going to Control Z to undo that move. Copying vectors and vector objects are pretty simple themselves. Now, I'm not going to do array copies down here. I just want to make one copy of this circle and put it over here. There are a couple of ways of doing it. We are all pretty much familiar with using the Edit menu and using keyboard shortcuts. And those keyboard shortcuts work in Vectric software as well. I've selected my circle. I can go up to Edit, and I can click Copy. Then I can click Paste. Now, when I pasted the copy directly over the original, it put that copy into Move and Transform mode because I'm creating a new copy. Now, I can use Move and Transform mode to click on that center square, drag it straight over, and now I have a copy. I'll Control Z to get rid of both of those changes. So now I just have my original vector. The keyboard shortcuts work the same way. I can hold down the Control button, tap the letter C to copy, then hold down the Control button, tap the letter V to paste that copy. And again, since I've created a new object, it immediately puts me into Move and Transform mode. And I can click and drag that copy right over here. There is another way, and this is the way I tend to use most often. Control Z to undo that, and Control Z to undo that. I'll click it once, then click it a second time to go into Move and Transform mode. And there is one more shortcut for copying a vector or a vector object. And that is to bring my cursor up here into the center, then hold down the Control key, then click and drag, and that creates a copy, and I can place it right there where I want it. Then click off. And this works for multiple vectors as well as a single object. I can then select both of these vectors, just click one of them, and it selects both and puts them into Move and Transform mode. Now I can put my cursor here over this center square, hold down Control, then click and drag two copies straight down. And I now have 4 copies. This comes in very handy when you just want to copy vectors and vector objects, but you don't want to create an array copy. You just want to make 1 or 2 and place them arbitrarily wherever you would like them within your design. Again, just a simple click, then click again, and you can move or scale that vector object any way you'd like. Select multiple vectors, click on one, and move them both, or hold down Control and drag copies to wherever you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and end this video right here. In future videos, we'll get into more advanced moving, editing, and resizing, but these should give you some basics to work with and help you get your designs arranged the way you'd like them. So I hope you got something out of this video. And if you did, I do hope you'll give this video a thumbs up. Now, I know there's no way I answered every question you may have about moving, scaling, or copying vectors or vector objects. So this afternoon at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session where you can ask me any question you'd like about anything I presented in this video or any of my other videos. That's today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on my YouTube channel. And I put a link to that live Q&A session down in the description box of this video. Now, before we wrap this up, I'd like to give a special shout out and say a special thank you to my channel members. Thank you, channel members. I appreciate your continued support. If you would like information on how to become a channel member, just click that little join button down there next to the subscribe button. Another panel will pop up and a video will play that'll tell you all about channel membership. So, I hope to see everybody this afternoon for the live Q&A session. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, whether you become a channel member or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.